How do you think when starting a brand together with a creator around, should there be a great product first and then find a talent with your upcoming launches, or find a great talent and then a product?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think both ways can be successful. You can both build a brand from the very scratch with a talent. You can also have a brand that you kind of launch and then get a talent to be a co-founder of early on. But I do personally think that the most effective and efficient way in launching these companies is to do it together with the talent from the very beginning. I think that's also how you get the strongest authenticity into the case, right? So if you launch a cup company, right, and then you say, okay, which influencers should we get to co-found this? They need to find an influencer that has a passion for ceramic cups to then make sure that it's authentic, and that might limit your search, right? So I think it's better to go around and find a talent first and then say, okay, what are you passionate about? What do you believe could become a successful company based on what you personally also like, love, and desire, and then go from there.
How do you set the right ownership stakes when it comes to the collaboration with, so it's you guys and external financing, I guess, in many cases. It's the management team and it's the talent. How do you think around the equity split there?
I think it differs a lot from talent case to talent case. There's not a clear structure here. There's not like a golden standard based on what I've seen. A lot of cases have very different cap tables, so ownership structures. If you look at incubators in general, so companies building companies, which is what we have done historically, right? In these cap tables, you usually have the incubator having a big ownership stake. It can be anything from, in often cases, 40% to 80%. And then you have a co-founding team that also has 15, 20, 30% per person. And then an investor also on board, right? If you have an external investor financing the case. When you launch with an influencer as well, with an incubator on board like us, then obviously the influencer needs a lot of ownership, right? It is that content creator's company, and that person will be the face of it. Everyone else is going to be behind the scenes and be around it, right? And in many cases, the influencer is also the CEO and is actually running the company as if, yeah, he or she was an executive doing everything else around the content creation too. So in these structures, that person needs a big part as one, and that's usually, yeah, a big part of the company, not just a 10-20% stake. It's definitely more than that. In many cases, we do also see 10 to 20%, but then also in that case, the investor incubator do come with a lot of resources, either from capital perspective or time perspective. So it differs from structure to structure. There's no golden standard here. But normally, right, if you look at what we do, if you look apart from the talent space, everything we incubate, we obviously have the majority stake there. Everything we invest in, we will have a minority stake. When you then put a talent into the equation, it's gonna kind of break the whole structure up a bit, and that depends on the talent. You know, how big is the person? What's the following size? What's the impact we believe that person, and what impact he or she believes he or she can create? Right, all these variables has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, and also like you said, how hands-on, I guess, they also makes a difference, whether they're, completely hands-off or basically running the company, and the management team also comes into play, I guess.
Yeah, completely.
So Vasilij, can you give me an overview of Blazor Capital and the size and what areas you guys are operating in?
Sure. So we started Blazor Capital back in 2017, the summer of 2017, as a e-commerce consumer brand incubator and investor, focusing on basically consumer goods within various categories that just have a big potential to grow online. And back in 2017, we kicked off the launch of the group company by launching kind of two sub-brands. The first one being a watch company, so basically analog Danish design watches, and the other company being an eyewear company. that is called MessyWeekend. The watch company is called Nordgreen. And that was kind of the beginning of the whole thing. 2 brands we built from the very scratch, together with an executive team and the founder team within each of the brands. I myself actually was also hands-on in the watch company, because we as founders of Blazor Capital kind of had to be hands-on from the very beginning on a brand level. So I was also involved in that. And we've then since then scaled the business tremendously, obviously, and are now involved in more than 20 brands that we own either a majority part in. These are mainly the ones we have incubated. And then we also have minority ownership stakes in the ones we have invested in. And we're now involved in basically brands within everything from accessories and jewelry to kind of health and nutrition, to skincare, cosmetics, beauty, and even lifestyle and beverages and things like that. So it's quite a broad and diverse field. That's where we are today. We've had quite a development over time in how we build things due to kind of the macro side of things that has been changing a lot, right? So both the changing consumer sentiment over time, but also just more kind of tangible elements such as marketing costs being more and more expensive, targeting being harder and harder through online mediums. All these things have also made us adjust in the way we do business. And this is also why today Blazor Capital's company is focusing more on building brands with talents, so celebrities, compared to when we started back in 2017. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the journey so far.
Really cool. I think it's a really interesting development, and like you say, it's also happened a lot since 2017 when you guys got started. But when you started, were you launching 2 brands at the same time?
I mean, it was technically in sequence. So the first brand was Nordgreen, but it was only a few months later that we started MessyWeekend, so the eyewear company. So it was quite, it was within like a 6-month period, something like that. So we knew in advance that we wanted to own quite, a lot of brands, build a lot of brands, co-create a lot of brands, and that's why we just started doing that from the very beginning.
And you said you, as founders of Blazor Capital, you were also hands-on with the actual operations of the brands already from start, basically.
Yeah, correct. And we've also changed the way we do that actually over time. So in the beginning, Blazor had a big central team where we hired people within the mother company that then conducted tasks within the brands, right? So we had performance marketing centralized in the mother company. We had tech development centralized in the mother company. Even things like influencer marketing was centralized, and operations and logistics. We've actually decided to decentralize these over time. So today there's less within Blazor that does operations in the brand. These tasks takes place kind of within the brand themselves, or through different agencies that we own today. So we own we co-own a tech agency. We're investors in a marketing agency. We own an influencer platform 100% as well. And then, so basically the tasks happened, or the projects happen from these instead of the central team, if the brands wants to use anything on a central basis that Blazor is involved in. So that has also changed a bit over time.
So what's the difference there between having, for instance, influencer marketing as a centralized unit in Blazor versus having it as an agency within the group?
To be fair, not too much. Like the main difference within this exact work stream is that way back when we started Blazor was more kind of an influencer recruiting kind of side of things, right? Identification, recruitment, and management, where we helped across different categories. But then we decided to acquire an agency. Actually, it's not an agency, it's a platform called Dream Influencers, which were merged into Blazor. And since they have their own team and had external clients anyway, obviously a lot of external clients, we just decided to spin that activity off completely. But even in regards to that, we in the beginning did not have much influence marketing central. It was mainly on the performance marketing side of things and the tech side of things and operations logistics. So it's more like Facebook marketing, as an example, performance marketing and Google advertising and things like that. That was very centralized. Influencer marketing is also a little bit like half and half, right? Brands did themselves. We helped out. But when we then acquired the agency, the platform Dream Influencers, those activities are happening more there. So if our own brands wants external guidance, external use of resources, then they can tap into that part of the company.
Gotcha. And you mentioned nowadays you're working more with the talent, which we will get more into later on. But what else has been the thesis other than, I guess, a lot of direct-to-consumer focused channels? But has there also been a thesis that the company should be profitable within X amount of time or something like that? How are you thinking throughout this time?
Yeah, so basically the thesis with Blazar as a whole was that with our kind of central activities, with the insights, intelligence we had, consumer excellence we had in the mother company, etc., and the playbook we had to build brands, we'd be able to launch several brands within a short time period that, based on a certain frameworks and certain ways of working, would be able to go from 0 to 1 in a pretty fast way, right? Because we know exactly what is required to do from the very beginning to the launch and the scale of the company. And in the beginning, we started doing that by investing certain values into each firm. It was, values around $500,000, a bit less than that we used to kick off the brands. Then we grew them from there. But over time, that became harder and harder due to the issues that I mentioned before, right? So the goal in the beginning was to then break even within like a 3 to 4 year period. And back then, it was at least easier than it is today to build a brand and scale it from scratch, because in 2017, and especially years before that, before we started Blazar, advertising on various marketing platforms was much cheaper than it's been in the past 24 months. It was much easier to target consumers on a much more exact basis than it is today. It was easier to track your performance and your result in a much more granular and transparent way that is today. Markets were less crowded, less saturated, and there was more room to play, especially if you go back to like 2012-13 to 2015-17, that space, there was a lot of new D2C brand coming up. And then for them to launch on these marketing platforms and grow their presence, it was basically substantially easier than it is today in terms of going from 0 to several million dollars in revenues, even double-digit or triple-digit million values. So today, that method doesn't work as effective as back then. And this is why that our thesis and our way of doing business has changed. And now we're focusing more on involving talents / celebrities into our brand building activities, right? For us, that's the most effective and efficient way to reach a big audience today, but also a good way to build a brand that is actually recognized very well from the day you launch.
Yeah. I actually last week interviewed somebody called Hunter Hammonds is his name. And he works with Sahil Bloom. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but I would say he's more of a B2B focused creator. So big on Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on. So they're starting a number of agencies. So more, service-based one, but it's also similar because it's like a creator-led business here. But as opposed to products, it's more services towards business owners that are following him on LinkedIn and Twitter. So I think it's a really, really interesting theme. But at what point were you realizing that there is a serious opportunity here to build business together with a creator, as opposed to what you probably did before, pure play influencer collaborations?
I mean, we knew from the very beginning that there's a lot of brands that has been built with creators and become very, very big within a couple of years. And content creator brands have been on the market for decades. I mean, if you look at I don't know what a good example is, whether it's JC's it's called Die Öse cognac brand, right? That's things from 2012 or something like that. You can look at Beats by Dre, Dr. Dre's brand that he was involved in. That's from 2006. Vitamin Water, which 50 Cent was a part of. That goes all the way back to I think it's 2000. you've had creator-led brands that they date back decades. So we knew from the beginning that was a big opportunity. The problem is for incubators and also investors to get access to them, right? So all these big talents of the world, celebrities, musicians, artists, actors, content creators, they are managed by big agencies, a lot of them, right? So you have agencies like UTA and CAA and IMG and Rock Nations and these guys of the world. And getting access to them and getting kind of their trust to work with them and their talents, that's the hard part. So just jumping into the startup scene and saying, hey guys, we want to create a brand with your talents, a lot of people do that and it's not easy, right? So you need to build the trust and the accessibility to these agencies to then be able to build talented brands. And I think with Blazor, we spent years on building our name and our brand equity through our brand incubations that we did from scratch to then get access to the agencies that today allows us to launch more brands with content creators and celebrities. And before doing that, we also did a lot of talent-led projects in our existing brands, right? Without building the company with them from scratch. So as an example, in MessyWeekend, the eyewear company, we did a co-creation of a product together with Logan Paul and his brand that's called Maverick. So he obviously was not a part of the creation of MessyWeekend or anything, so he's not related to that brand directly, but there's an indirect product that's been created with him and Maverick. And the same has been done with our watch company, Nordgreen. As an example, we launched a watch collection in Japan with Koyoki. That's a famous actor that, among other things, has been in the Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. And so we've kind of worked within the talent space, but with brands that are not talent-led. And now we're evolving more into creating talent-led brands. But if you see today, right, as mentioned before, they've been there for years, but almost all the unicorns and these that are created rapidly today within the consumer scenes, they are talent-led. Whether it's Prime with Logan Paul, I'm not sure whether that's a dollar unicorn yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're not too far from it. Or whether it's 818 Spirits with Kendall Jenner or others, right? These are all brands that are being created and scaled within a very short time period compared to brands that are not talent-led. So it's a thesis that that we are working on and a space that we are operating more and more in.
So one of the talent-led companies that you're working with today is Chamberlain Coffee, together with creator Emma Chamberlain, who probably a lot of people know about from YouTube and actually for her love of coffee. But what is the backstory there of how you came together?
So Chamberlain Coffee was the first kind of major talent case that we co-created. We had a few smaller ones before that, but Chamberlain Coffee was the first one that really took off. And the story with that is basically that we got in touch with the agency that works with Emma in the US a couple of years back. One of our partners, he also moved to Los Angeles to work with the operations, start the operations over the United States. And together with her agencies, we discussed it a lot of back and forth and came to the conclusion that being a part of Emma Chamberlain's coffee brand and help scaling that and co-create that would be beneficial for both parties. So that's kind of the way we got into the case. And it's been a fantastic case to be a part of, and a case from which we have and I have learned a lot in terms of how to build and scale companies within the talent space effective and efficiently. So I mean, she's not known from being an actor in movies or kind of being a famous singer or anything else. She is by heart a YouTuber and a content creator and has been there since the beginning. And what I've really learned with this process, what we learned as a group, is that working with content creators allows you to really be able to build a brand effectively and efficiently from the beginning compared to where you were with other types of talent, because of their ability to launch content on a continuous basis and also do it in a very, very real and authentic way. Because prior to the launch of the brand, there's been years of content being created by the talent in which, in this case, Emma has been talking about one of her big passions, which is coffee, right? So it's also a good way to to build something that is truly authentic and truly real when you then actually take the big step and launch a company together with this talent. So I think, yeah, it's been a really, really cool journey so far, and I think everyone is happy about where the company is today.
And so you guys are based in Copenhagen in Denmark, and Chamberlain Coffee is mainly known as a US brand, I guess, even though you can get it in Europe, I guess. But how does that work with kind of, how things are done? Does that create a barrier in terms of, time zone, or is it like a remotely distributed way you're doing it?
No, so basically the entire team that runs Chamberlain Coffee sits in LA, right? So there's a full team driving that project. Basically, one of our partners, Blazor, went there before we launched, before we co-created the Chamberlain Coffee, and he's been a part of the teams ever since then. But basically, we've hired the team over there has hired a complete executive team running the company today, and a complete organization that is situated local in Los Angeles. So we actually only have like a few contact persons from Copenhagen taking part in that project. Some of the founders of the group, but the day-to-day operations and the management, the growth of the company is taking place by the local team in LA, and of course the entire network surrounding her as a talent, right? So she has her agency, she has her agent, she has all the other stakeholders surrounding her. So there's a full machinery taking place in Los Angeles, so the time difference doesn't matter. I mean, at the moment, we were now at a state where Blazor, we're more kind of an operating investor and co-creator, but there's a full team really driving the brand over there, a co-founding team and executive team.
What's the can you give like an overview of the size of Chamberlain Coffee today? What's to give people an idea of what it has grown into?
So Chamberlain Coffee have had a fantastic growth journey since it launched, and if you look on social media today, it's a company that has more just on Instagram more than 500,000 followers just around 3 years post launch, but also an account which has a lot of a very kind of engaged audience and following. So I don't think you'll find other companies in the US that has the same kind of engagement that Chamberlain Coffee has. It's a brand that has really tapped into the Gen Z scene in contradiction to many other brands in the US and even on a worldwide basis. So a lot of the customers are actually customers that Chamberlain Coffee as a brand has introduced coffee to, because they are quite young, the audience, right? But then of course there's also all the people following her as a person and the brand as a firm that is engaged in the company. So it's a company that I think is a real challenger to a lot of the coffee brands you're seeing in the US, and we're reaching a scale now that is quite substantial. In the beginning, all the sales was happening online on a D2C basis, so people went to Chamberlain's website and ordered products from there. We've since expanded to other channels and are now also very physically present, offline. So a couple of months back, we as an example launched in all 4,000, I think it is, Walmarts in the United States. I think by the end of the year we're going to be in plus 6,000-7,000 retail outlets across the country. So it's really a brand that is getting a really high awareness in the country. It's present in most places and is reaching a level that is very, very exciting. The brand's also operating in Europe, mainly in the UK. But there's no doubt that the presence in the US is where the majority of activities happens.
That's awesome. And is it, to give an idea, is it still mainly driven by the content made by Emma, or are you guys also doing a lot of paid marketing, and like is the distribution channels changing over time?
It is being run like a kind of a normal online D2C company, right? So there is activities happening across the majority of channels out there. So there's advertising going on both the platforms of Meta, so on Facebook and on Instagram. We are advertising on TikToks. There is standard search ads and display ads, etc. on Google, right? So we are operating across multiple marketing channels out there, but we also continuously getting content created through MS own channels, which have an extremely high reach and a very, very high engagement, which is fantastic to see for consumer brand like Chamberlain Coffee. So we obviously using the reach of her as a person and you could almost say media, right, because of the reach, but we're also using all the other channels and doing all the activities that other D2C brands would also do.
What do you think is the kind of formula to make a creator-led brand work? Because there are a lot of creators, celebrities, talent, influencers that want to kick off their own products. But what do you think are some of the most important things to get that right?
That's a good question. I think it's super important that whatever a creator launches is authentic. Like, you need to have this product creator fit. It doesn't make sense for a creator who have talked a lot about beauty and lifestyle and health to suddenly launch a candy company or something like that, right? So it's a big misfit. The fit is the fit between the content creator and the product is very important, and so is the authenticity. So the more the creator has really tapped into this product or service or whatever it is in the past, through past content and through everything through the entire journey that the followers has been through over time, the more effective the product launch will be. So at least for me, authenticity is absolute key. If you don't have the authenticity, it's just not gonna work over time. It's hard to build authenticity in the future without having any past awareness of the product service you are launching. Then it's also important to obviously launch a product or service that there is a demand for, or for which you can create a demand. For me at least, it's important that the industry you're launching is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that is also growing. So ideally, something that has a plus 5 to 10% CAGR for the next 5-10 years, I think is ideal. But you can also find other categories that are not growing as fast, but are still large. So that's important too. And then also for me, what is a good variable in these launches is that whatever you do should have a repeat kind of purpose. You should be able to get repeatability into the equation of transaction, so you have your customers coming back time and time again. And that can obviously happen within a lot of categories, whether it's skincare, like the products that Kylie Cosmetics or cosmetics product that Kylie Cosmetics launches, or whether it's vitamin drinks, that's vitamin water they can drink time and time again. I think there's a lot of things you can tap into that has a high repeatability, but the more you can look into that as a talent, the better. And then I also believe that solving a problem is of big value. So if you at the same time with a large market that is growing, with having a product that's repeatable and authentic to the content creator, if you at the same time can have something that actually solves a problem, then to me that's the secret sauce to the whole thing. So there's a couple of things you should be looking at, I think, as a content creator and as a company that is launching the brand itself. But there is obviously also exceptions out there, right? We've seen talents creating big brands launching, whether it's tequila or other products that are not even online friendly, right? That has anyway become billion-dollar companies. So yeah, there's a lot of ways you can go, but from my perspective, this is at least the most important things to look into.
What do you think is a good example of a problem-solving product? Because in my experience, a lot of the creator-led brands are often nice to haves or vitamins versus painkillers. But it would be interesting to see how you think there. What do you mean with a problem in that sense?
As an example, for me, an example here would be, as an example, if talent launched a fantastic natural organic product that could prevent hair loss, right? For men, as an example, if you had like, or for females, right? If you have an influencer, content creator has been really praised, having beautiful and long and healthy hair, right? If that person created a product that would then facilitate that for others while preventing hair loss, then you're solving kind of at least a future problem that could occur for the end consumer. It could be products that could help with solving, as an example, whether it's problems like obesity or skin problems. It could be a cream for acne, as an example. It could be, and these are just examples on the top of my head, but I'm thinking more like in that direction, that you actually launch something that solves a real problem that is for many people a need to have and not just a nice to have. If you can do that and do it in a truly authentic way, that's extremely effective, I think, and something that can really allow it to create a big company also fast, because you will have the big reach of the influencer. But it is also extremely important that you do it authentically also. Otherwise, I don't think neither the influencer will be believing in it, neither will the customers, and nor will all the stakeholders around it. So authenticity in these cases is super important.
It seems to me when I see creators launching brands, even though they have a fit with the product, let's say you're launching an apparel brand or beauty, which is a big chunk of the brands coming out, that they usually have this big wave or big jump in the beginning, but eventually it kind of loses its growth. What do you think are reasons for that, and what are other mistakes you see when creators launch their own brands?
I think when you launch your own brand, there will always be like a hockey stick in the beginning, right? Because it's very exciting, and some followers of the creators, and you follow the person for 5 years, or even 10 years, right? So for that person to suddenly say, I've launched my own company, that's a very, very big thing, and you're gonna follow, be excited about it, and go onto the webpage, go into the store to see the product, and maybe also purchase it in the beginning, right? So I think that's a natural thing to see, that you're gonna get the hockey stick. Whether the hockey stick will then continue, or whether the company will at least then continue to grow from then on, depends on the product you launch, right? Is it a product that people actually want? Is it authentic to the influencer in a way that allows the influencer to talk about the products over and over and over again in the content that's being created, right? I think all these things really matter. I guess the reason why Logan Paul's Prime, as an example, it seems like at least that it's continuously growing, is because I guess the customers they just like the product, right? In the beginning, they like it because, okay, it's Logan Paul's product. It's nice. We follow him in KSI, and we like the idea of it, but it also tastes good, and it is good in regards to my hydration and things like that, right? So if you can then build that true demand into the consumers, then you're going to continue to see the growth. If you don't do that, I think that's where you see the crashes happening, right? Where it's exciting in the beginning, but after some time, it's gonna kind of just crash and burn anyway. And yeah, this happens if the product is bad, if there's a bad product market fit, a product influencer fit, and also if it's not authentic, I guess, over time. So that's, I guess, are the main distinctions here. A lot of people, they argue that influencer and content creator brands, they grow in the beginning, and then no matter what, at some point they will tank. It might take 2 or 3 years or more, but I, as a person, do disagree with that, because we have seen time and time again that content creator brands can even last for decades. And there's a lot of examples of that. Either whether it's Fabletics, an example that Kate Hudson was involved in. I think it's from 2013, right? So that's more than 10 years old. Again, 50 Cent is involved in vitamin water. It's more than 20 years old. So you see these there are a lot of cases that do definitely last over many years. The Honest Company by Jessica Alba is also, I think, more than 10 years old. So you just need to do it right.
Någonting jag märkt är att i nästan alla städer och platser så är maten i hjärtat i kulturen. Men att veta vilka restauranger som är bra är ofta svårt, och det finns ofta en uppsjö av rekommendationer och alternativ. En ny förmån som American Express Platinum-medlem är dining, och det är en väldigt värdefull förmån om du gillar att prova nya kurerade restauranger. Som medlem får du en 2-rättersmiddag för 2 personer 6 gånger per år på utvalda restauranger i Sverige. Och i appen får du också rekommendationer för att prova nya. Om du vill läsa mer om hur diningupplevelsen fungerar, kolla in beskrivningen nedan eller gå in på American Express hemsida. Men specifika villkor och regler gäller.
I think that if you look at especially brands created by small content creators and small influencers, that can be, anything from really 30, 40,000 followers kind of to 500,000, even a bit more, right? If you look at that kind of segments and look at the past 10 years, there've been a lot of brands being created in a quite opportunistic way, right? Where the content creator have found a certain category that seems to grow a lot based on the launch of other content creators or based on the launches of startups. And then they've just kind of copied that, made a cool product, launch it, use their reach, and get scale out of it, right? I think that strategy is not possible anymore to a very large extent due to a lot of the reasons that I mentioned before. So the increased marketing costs that are happening on most marketing platforms, the complexity in targeting and tracking, all these things make it hard to just launch products and grow them without kind of a much deeper thought. Also, the competition now is too high within most categories to just do that. And for that reason, I do believe that authenticity, as we discussed before, will be more important than ever going forward. Like, influencers have to launch things, products, services that they're truly passionate about, that they're truly engaged about, that they truly kind of love and believe in. And they need to do it within kind of categories where they also think there's a real opportunity, and not just based on what do others do and can I kind of indirectly or directly see myself in that. So I think that's going to be very, very important going forward. The influencer will never build the brand truly and only on his and her kind of following, right? That's going to give the person a head start. It's kind of an unfair competitive advantage because the person has a reach. It's free to reach through posts and kind of stories and videos and whatever. But at some point that will become kind of saturated, right? You can't just keep posting for years and years and years and then just expect people to buy. That's why the brand will have to be a standalone brand, just like Prime is on the surface of it, not Logan Paul's company, right? If you know, you know. If you just see Prime, you will not know until you read the description. The same is the case with the Tiramana that is owned by The Rock, right? That can also stand alone, or 818 by Kendall Jenner, right? A lot of these things they can stand alone without the influencer, especially in the future when the company has had scale. So I think it is important that whatever influence launch in the future, regardless of whether they're small or massive, that they can do it in a way where the product can be standing alone without them, right? So if they pull back at some point, it should be able to grow continuously without them. So I think the size of the influencer kind of determines the kickstart and the head start that person's going to have compared to brands that are being built without influencers. And it's going to take them to a certain level, right? It's going to take them to A, but to get to B, you need the brand to be able to run itself. And this is what everyone needs to take into consideration, regardless of whether they're small or large, regardless of whether they're online or offline, regardless of whether they are product or service. So kind of that's at least my thoughts on it.
You guys at Blazor now have, I think you mentioned 20 brands. Either you started them or invested in them. So it's quite a lot. What do you think regarding starting the talent-led brands going forward here, or coming in early or investing and so on? Do you plan to do it with many or fewer?
I mean, now we are in a place where we want to do it with fewer. Like, we prefer to do a few bigger bets now, where we launch a couple more talent cases with very big talents that we're then going to help build, launch and scale for the future. But it's also a function of, I guess, the position we have in the market now, the network we have and the access we have, that we are in a place where we can do that at a large extent than if you go 3, 4, 5 years back. So for us at least, the goal is to launch a couple of more with some big talents. But that being said, that doesn't mean that you can't do the other thing. You can also still launch very big companies with influencers that have a million followers, 2 million followers. We've seen that before, both in Europe and the US. And I mean, in Sweden, where you're from, you also have a couple of cases within the I think it's a beauty and skincare segment, right? That is doing triple-digit million, at least SEK in revenue, with that small kind of following. I mean, it's still a large following, right? But it's still very different to if you look at the Jonas of the world and others. So I mean, everything is possible, but for us, we're looking more into the mega influencers now, based on just where we are at the moment.
Let's say a talent has authenticity for a product. Does it matter where in the stage of that talent's career they are? As for instance, I'm comparing somebody like Emma, who has crazy engagement. She's doing really well on YouTube. She's fairly young, or she's really young, at least when you started, as opposed to somebody who has been known for 30 years, maybe on TV, but they're also on social media. They have a big following. What's your take on that? Is that still a good case, or how are you thinking about it?
That's a good question. I actually don't have a clear answer to that. Like, I don't think there's ever like a truly right time to launch a company for a talent, right? Because the more hours they put into the content creation and kind of the talent side of things, the more they can grow their accounts and their followings, their reach and their awareness. But the more they postpone the launch of their own company, the big opportunity they might lose on in a certain moment of time, right? So we do just live in a dynamic world that is changing on a continuous basis. So even influencers, as an example, have a passion for a certain product or service. Who knows if that particular product or service will be have a big demand in 10 years and even 5 years, based on the innovations that are taking place, right? So I think it's hard to say. I don't think there's an easy answer to the question. But I do think the influencers need to definitely be ready to take on the project, right? Because it is a big thing to launch your own company. It's not just something where you have a team around you and they're going to take care of everything. In some influence cases, they do have an entourage and a lot of stakeholders that do help them with building and launching their company, but they do still have to be truly active themselves, both in the content creation processes, but also when it comes to the product development processes, the internal structures of the company and all these things. It is just a big project, and I think it's important that the influencer accepts that, okay, this is gonna take time, this is gonna take up a big part of his or her life, and if they're not ready to take on that, then they should wait. But whether they should do it when they have 10 million followers, 30 million, whether they should do it when they are 22 or 32, I think that very much depends on the influencer and also where he or she is in their career in terms of follower growth, engagement, the projects coming in from external parties, etc., etc.
Yeah. I guess what you said there about follower growth, it makes a lot of difference whether they're having a lot of new people coming to them versus they have a huge following, but maybe not as engaged, and maybe people are falling off. And I mean, in terms of starting a company with that talent, I guess, has an impact as well.
No, very important point, actually. I think that's something that I did mention before. It's super important that when you launch a company with an influencer, when an influencer launches a company, him or herself, it's important they do it at a time when they do have that growth, right? When they do have the hype. Like, I mean, there's no doubt that if, I don't know, Mbappé, the French footballer, right? If he launched a sports apparel company today, I'm pretty sure that'll be more successful than a footballer who has the same following but stopped his career 5 years ago, right? It's all about the hype and the following and the following growth that you have in terms of the success you're going to create. There is definitely a an issue with the timing if you have stopped doing what you became famous for, right? So I think that's a very important variable to take into consideration in the journey of creating a company. No doubt about that.
Super interesting. Thank you so much, Vasilij. This is a really interesting phenomenon and growth wave happening. And thanks so much for sharing your thoughts. I'm excited to follow Chamberlain Coffee and everything that you guys are doing at Blazar as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It's been a pleasure.